Well, how are you? How are you? How are you? Good evening and welcome. It's good for y'all to be out there. I see a bunch of you already out there in the chat, and I am so thankful for y'all. What did we got? Like 23 out there already, and the show just starting. That's fantastic. Tim Guba, Dennis Godson, and if you want me to butcher a name, I can do it. Trust me. I called James Parker today, Paul at Rockler. So be be aware. Yeah, and he's out there in the chat. James Parker's out there in the chat. Yeah, I introduced him to Pat, the manager, and I just say he goes, "You know who I am?" I said, "Yeah, James Parker." So Pat come walking up, and I'm saying, "Hey, this is my friend Paul." And I'm like, ah. And he kind of like looked at me, and I'm like, "Yeah, I can make a bad name worse than what it really is." So Dave Hart, Inspired Woodworks, Bob Lee, all y'all out there in the chat, and I appreciate you very much. Had a great time today at Rockler. We made bow ties for Father's Day for the kids, and we had a lot of parents make them, and they came in and they made some too. So it's like no big deal. It's when the parents want to come in and make them with their kids. So, but we had a great time doing that. I always enjoyed it. I enjoyed it last year. The crowd wasn't as big this year. It was kind of a little bit disappointing, so to speak. This mic's kind of pushing up against my cheek, so it's bothering me. But it was a little disappointing, but that's okay. Some years are going to be bigger and better than others. And there was enough left over that I made myself a bow tie, which is absolutely worthless because where am I going to put it? You're not going to see it. And it's going to strangle me to death with the beard, but I made one too, so. It hasn't got any finish on it. I just stuck it together before I left. Matter of fact, the bottle that I was using of the super glue just squirted out everywhere, so I got super glue all over that area. But I decided to make me a little one. But a lot of good times, a lot of good kids. I posted some pictures over on Facebook. Kids were fantastic. A lot of them were old enough that we got them on the scroll saw and got them to cut some of the stuff out. And since we're talking about it, James Parker, he lives in Ocala, which is about 2 hours north of where I was in Orlando, Altamont Springs, which is just north of Orlando. He drove 2.5 hours, him and his wife, Sandra, to see me. And it was so fantastic. I enjoyed. He stayed there for a little while and talked. We got to talk and have a good time. So, yeah, I liked it. It looks good. So many people are saying the thing was, CA finish time. Somebody was saying it looks good, Russ. Yeah, it's always fun to make them. So anyway, he brought me some really nice cherry plum. I think he said it wasn't Paul. See, I just did it again. I called him Paul. James, wasn't it plum that you brought me? Cherry, cedar. Plum, cherry, and cedar, I believe it was. See, I called him Paul right on the show, so y'all know I messed up. So anyway, he brought me, first off, he made this, and he brought some of his work that he has done. And I think he underestimates his talent, okay? I really do. I don't think that he understands how talented he really is, because I saw some of his work and I posted a picture of me and him on Facebook standing there with some of his work. But he made something for my wife that proved without a shadow of a doubt this man is a very talented man on the scroll saw. He made this for my wife on the scroll saw. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
You don't make that as an amateur, my friend. I'm sorry. And he was so upset, and I don't want to point this out, but it showed one of these little pieces broke off in and bringing it. He was he was literally upset about that broke. And I said, it's no problem. I understand. But yeah, he is really, really talented. This thing is about my palm of my hand is a little over around 4 inches. So it's right in the palm of my hand length. So I would say it's a little over 4 inches tall. So James, you, dude, are very, very talented. And I appreciate you coming and seeing me so very, very much. Yeah, it was plum. He said the one piece of wood he brought me was plum. And then he made me a self-portrait, which I really love. Here, Lynn, can y'all see what that is? Or let me put something behind it so you can really see it. He made me a self-portrait.
Spitting image.
Yeah. He says, that looks just like you. I'm like, oh, wow.
The mustache is a little off.
Yeah, but. And then he gave me this also that he made. He also can not only scroll, he can turn.
I like it.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that nice?
These are so cool.
So he can not only scroll, he can turn. Excuse me. Sorry. So thank you, James. Good time spent with him today and talking to you. And some beautiful work. Some very beautiful. This is awesome. It within itself. He told me a hard time you have, you need to turn it as smooth as you can, because when you start sanding it, whatever the concentration of what they use for the colors in the center, and you can see it in a few places. When you start sanding, it kind of bleeds over. So you got to turn it as smooth as you can. But I'll cherish this for a long time. And the other, and my wife, I showed it to my wife, and she absolutely loves this, dude. She absolutely loves it. So it was so nice. So thank you, James. I appreciate it very, very much. And thank you for being in the chat and watching me everywhere. And he, like I said, he brought me a real thick piece of cherry. The plum is like with bark on it and everything, like what you would want to make out of a tabletop. It's too small to make a table out of it, but I think it would look real good if I cut a piece out of it and do some scrolling in the center of it. Kind of like Sterling Davis did with the Panther and the wood with the bark left over on the outside. That's kind of what I have planned for what he has. Patrick's is Patrick out there from Patrick? Yeah, Patrick Workshop. He's out there in the chat. I just seen him show up over there. And then Robert Crow, he's out there in the chat. So, okay. So the show's going to be on the Woodworking Club had Bob, and I will not pronounce his last name, because I can butcher a name worse than anybody on the planet. And I know I'll try to butcher it if I try to pronounce it. But he's from Franklin International, which is the makers of Titebond glue, was at our Woodworking Club, Lakeland Woodworking Club meeting, and gave us a 2-hour presentation. And I learned so much, and some of the stuff I do want to pass on to you before it gets too late. A week from now, if I try to have the show and talk about it, I'm not going to remember it. Trust me. So some of the stuff is fresh in my mind. And if you have some questions, once I get going, just give us a little bit to do the introductions. If you like to post them out there, and if you guys help me watch the questions and have them, you can ask me. And if it's something that he covered, I would be more than happy if I remember it to answer your questions about it. So, because it's all still kind of like fresh up here in my mind, as long as I don't screw up and call Bob, Brenda, or Debbie, or Paul, one of those names that I somehow frequently mess up. I don't know why I do that. I swear I don't. So anyway, hope your camera, I took some pictures with James, and he says, I hope your camera didn't break. So my sponsors are Devobel Technologies for web design, development, hosting. Visit devobel.com. FastCap, innovative products for the professional woodworker. Go to fastcap.com. Rockler, 60 years in woodworking. Create with confidence. Visit rockler.com. Bearwood Supply Company, your best choice for hard-to-find woodworking supplies. Go to bearwood.com. Klingspor, the sanding specialist. Woodworkingshop.com. And Seiko, the scroll saw specialist. Seiko.com. If you need some of those products that some of these people, my sponsors, have, go visit them and tell them Russ sent you. Please, I'd appreciate that. Then they'll know that actually what I'm doing is worth it. So thank you very much for being here. Let's get down to, and I have a fan again on me tonight because I didn't get home until like a little after 6 o'clock. So like 6:20, I turned the air conditioner on. It was hot in here, and I got a fan. It's cooling off nicely, but it isn't that cold. So if my beard is doing one of those wacky things, you'll just have to understand. So let's start with introductions, and let's go to from. I thought he said his grandkids here, and he wasn't going to show up. So just for you showing up at the last minute, and you're on the right, you're going to be first, Mr. Russ Meadows.
I figured you'd hit me up. God dang it. If I'd known that was going to happen, I'd have sat in the back of the class, by God. Yeah, Russ Meadows from Russ and Nails Wood Shop on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube as well. And I have my grandson here. I was going to come let everybody meet him. He's 6 years old. I just started teaching him to scroll last night. And but he's got his other cousins here, and he can't shut his mouth enough to get in here. So he's out.
Good to have you, my friend.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Good. One thing real quick, and Dennis Godson just posted out there, and I saw this the other day. I think that he said he was going to do this, but it actually started the Seiko ST21. The Seiko scroll saw is on sale, and shipping is paid too. Dennis Godson just posted, and I think I read an email that he said he was going to do that, but I didn't realize it already started. So yeah, there you go. The ST21 Seiko scroll saw is on sale, and shipping is paid for too. So free shipping. That's a heck of a deal. Let me tell you, that's a really great scroll saw. You won't be disappointed. Trust me. So, Paul, not this Paul, not the Paul that was at Rockler today.
And not me either, right?
Yeah.
You must like me the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul Corliss from Paul's Messy Workshop on Instagram, on YouTube, and on .com. And thanks for having me on, Russ.
You're welcome. Mr. Al Forte.
Couldn't find the button. Al Forte, Odessa Woodworking and Maker Shop on YouTube, and Kilroy79763 on Twitch. Thanks for inviting me on, and great to see everybody out there.
Then Mr. Ken Moon. Yeah, you're next. It's you.
Okay. Couldn't hit that unmute there. Ken Moon from Moonpot Creations. You can find me on Facebook under Moonpot Creations, Instagram, and Google Plus, and then MPC_Ken on Twitter.
Great to have you.
Thank you for having me, Russ. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. Sorry I clicked off of you too quick because you were talking. I was on Matt. So say that again.
I said it's a pleasure.
You're welcome. I wanted to make sure you said that so everybody could hear it, because sometimes behind the scenes you call me, you don't talk to me that nice. So anyway, let's go to Matt Haas.
Hi, everyone. Matt Haas from Awesome Wood Things. I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm super excited that for once in a long time, I have a proper project build video on the Awesome Wood Things YouTube channel. I'm so thrilled. It's my office desk. It took me 6 months to make with a little bit of shop time here and there. I love it. Go check it out. I think you'll like it too. And I'm thrilled to be here. Glue. Who doesn't love glue?
Yes.
Glue. Oh.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, like I said, he had a wealth. The show or the presentation was almost 2 hours long, a wealth of information, and I know damn good and well I'm not going to remember all that information. But if somebody has some questions, even y'all on the panel, and ask me, I might just tell you he didn't go over that. I don't remember, but in the same aspect, I also might be able to remember it. So, Mr. John Schaffner, wake up, John. You look like you were asleep there for a second.
Oh, I'm awake. Good evening, everyone. John Schaffner from good old Central New York, where it's high and dry and beautiful out today. You can find me on Facebook, and if you're really bored, you can check out my YouTube channel. And I did dress appropriately for the show tonight.
Yep, isn't that cool? Titebond.
I won it on one of their Wednesday giveaways. They have every, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks they give away a bunch of stuff, and
right.
I was one of the lucky recipients. Been wanting one for a long time. Been using Titebond ever since I can remember.
Right. Cool. Katie.
Hi, my name's Katie Dawson, and I'm on Facebook. Is pretty much it. I've got a YouTube channel that I never do anything on. Other than that, I just come here to bother Russ.
Okay, I just had something message from Facebook pop up, so no big deal. Good to have you on. And I actually kind of like, I loved last week. I want to tell you, I loved last week. I even told my wife, you've got to come and watch this. And my wife kind of watches some of my shows, but she watched you and was sitting there laughing her behind off.
Good.
Yeah, she had a good time, so it was enjoyable. It was really great.
I just appreciate everybody putting up with my silliness, and it was a fun time. It was a fun thing. And
Katie, you're one of those people I can honestly say I love you, sweetheart.
I had to change my diaper twice.
Jim Bashir's. And here's the thing, you're following Katie again, so how are you going to follow that?
It's not Katie this week. It's John changing his diaper twice. I'm Jim Bashir's. Have the YouTube channel is Driveway Workshop, and everything else is Jim Bashir's, all one word. And thanks for having me on. And if you have not seen Matt's office desk build, go on YouTube and watch it. Later.
Yeah, I'm going to. Yeah, don't leave the show to go watch it, for heaven's sakes. Wait until afterwards. And then Brenda. Not Becky, not Debbie, not Brenda.
Brenda.
I love it.
This is Brenda G of Brenda G's Designs, and I made a list. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Patreon, I'm on Etsy, I'm on Google+, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. I'm also on Twitch. I do a live show there at 3 on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays Eastern Time, and I do a live stream on YouTube on Monday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and I put up videos on YouTube all the time. So check out my channels there on Twitch and YouTube.
Awesome. And what the funny thing about it is, she comes back week after week, even though I mess up and call her different names. So that tells you she forgives me, or she wouldn't be back. Guys, just one thing before we get started, and that is we have 35 people watching. So if y'all would all give me a thumbs up, there should be 35 thumbs ups out there right now. So if you don't mind, I would appreciate it. Pop a little thumbs up for me. And James Parker has already gave me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. About 26 thumbs up by himself.
Hey, Russ, don't forget to talk about Tommy G.
Yes, Tommy G. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And trust me, sometimes I think some of y'all, if when I say y'all remind me, don't think for a million years when y'all do, like you said, you just did, Paul. I find that distracting. I think that's what y'all should do when I ask you to remind me of something, because I appreciate it. I'm going back past something. Let me go back through here. If y'all find it before I do, because these guys are chatters. Path. Probably about the time y'all find it, I'm going to find it.
Path 1961.
Steve French is out there. Hey, my good friend. I just saw him at the woodworking club meeting. Him and I are in the same woodworking club, so I get to see him. Wasn't it Path something that asked the questions about Tommy G?
It was Aussie something.
Yeah, it was way up there, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking for it.
I think that was before I joined.
I don't want to spend a lot of time looking for it. I remember it, but I just wanted to see if I could find it.
I found it, Russ.
I found it. I did. the same time you found it, I did. Aussie Man 77181 asked, "Hi, I have a question. Remember Tommy G, the guy who was making the wood lathe tools? Anybody know what happened to him and his webpage is gone?" Tommy G is a good friend of mine, and I stay in contact with him. I mean, it may be a little while before I stay in contact with him, but usually within 24, 48 hours, if I send him a message, he responds. And so I haven't talked to him really recently, but I'm concerned about that. And I did not know that. And so he was on my show here a while back. So I will be reaching out to him. And I hope, he was involved in an automobile accident and really, really got messed up. He was in an SUV, either a Lincoln Town Car or not a Lincoln Town Car, a Lincoln, what's the SUV of theirs?
Is it a Denali?
Huh?
Denali?
No, that's the Chevy Denali. But he was in one of those Navigator, Lincoln Navigator, or the Cadillac Escalade, and was in a rollover, and it rolled several times, and he got really, really injured. And the night that he did his thing here to show us how he was making the wooden lathe tools, I had talked to him a couple of weeks before, and he was still having problems with stuff that had in the rollover, like back, spinal type injuries or whatever. So seeing that he has not responding and close that down, which I did not know, because I mean, I may go for 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks that I don't talk to him, but then I'll be saying, I wonder how Tommy G is doing, and all, you know how you do. John, I might not talk to John Schaffner for 2 or 3 weeks. Sometimes but then all of a sudden I go, hey, wonder how John's doing, and I'll type him in, hey, how are you doing, bud? So I will try to get in contact him, because with you saying that he's not selling his tools, his website's gone, everything, I'm kind of concerned about him. So I will be making contact with him and see if I can get a hold of him and see what he has to say. So, yeah. Tommy, if you're watching, we're concerned about you, bud. I just want to make sure you're okay. So if you want to PM me over on Facebook, if you watch the show, I would appreciate it. So really great guy, really fantastic guy. Had a great job and everything. He was making those lathe tools. And so I hope that his conditions from that accident haven't escalated to some kind of point or something, but we never know. But might want to say a little prayer for him, because something obviously is going wrong or going bad, so to speak. So, or it may be that he's just trying to walk away from stuff and recuperate. So we never know. I don't want to put everybody in a bad mood about it, but we never know. But I will try to get in contact with him. So, all right. So, if y'all can help me monitor, and the good thing about it is Steve French is out there in the chat. Steve, I would ask you, please stay on, if you can, for the show, and help me answer some of these questions, because I'm going to try to recall in my memory, which is not very good, obviously, about what Bob talked about at the meeting. And I would appreciate you being out there, because you were there too, and remembering some of this stuff and refreshing my memory. Your memory is better than mine, I think. So if you don't mind, my friend, please stay out there. He's already answering questions, so quit answering the dang questions before I get to answer them up here. So bad boy, I'm supposed to do that first. So what he's answering about that is one of the questions between, and I'll go ahead and explain that, with Titebond, is Titebond 2 being what they classify as water resistant, and then Titebond 3 being water proof. Okay. So the experiment, or what they challenge whoever is the glue masters that say that and the federal government that say this is what this is what you have to go through for your glue to be waterproof, and this is what you have to go go through for your glue to be water resistant. Okay. So when he's talking about Titebond 3 being waterproof, is they actually glue two pieces of wood together and put it, it's not only in water, it's boiling water. Yeah, literally boiling water. And then they take it out and then they let it dry, or they put it in extreme cold, and then they put it back in the boiling water and they take it out again. So it's literally boiling water. Well, Titebond 2 will not go through the boiling water test. And that is when they say waterproof. How many people are going to put two pieces of glue or two pieces of wood that they've glued together on their house and boil the water? Come on, give me a break. Go ahead, Paul. You can go ahead and unmute yourself and talk. But
I was just going to say I would.
I would.
Well, I think Katie would too.
Yeah. So, but Titebond 2, they've actually submerged it in water for days upon days upon days, and it's fine. It didn't have any problem. It didn't break. There was no problem. But that is not waterproof. That is water resistant. Okay. Virgin water is not waterproof. Boiling water is waterproof. Now, whoever made that guideline up, I would say you're an idiot. I mean, who's going to?
In the electrical world, we've got those standards too. That's you have an IP rating for something that's ingress protection, and then you can have a NEMA rating, but they do that for thermal shock. So if you thermally shock something, real hot, then bring it to real cold, real hot, you can do that so many times, and if the thing doesn't crack, then it passes that classification.
Yeah, but come on. I know that's extreme. That's a little too extreme. If you can submerge two pieces of wood glued together and underwater and leave it there for, let's say, 2 or 3 weeks, and then bring it out and dry it out, and then submit it to some tests, and then put it back in, and then bring it out and dry it out and submit it. That's waterproof, if you ask me. Where did the boiling crap come in? Because I just don't understand that.
They just want to thermally shock it.
Boiling is 212. It takes 212 degrees to boil water. Where on the planet Earth are that wood going to be exposed to 212 degrees? Is what I want to know. Under a magnifying glass.
For all practical purposes, they're both waterproof.
Yeah. So
could say it.
That was one of the things. Okay. So I don't see a lot of questions out there. One of the things that I learned about is let's talk about clamping, for instance. The most problem they have with clamping is make sure that when you put clamps on, that they subject the entire piece to even pressure. That makes a lot of difference. In other words, you don't want to have more pressure on one end or more pressure in the middle, which makes sense. I think we all know that. But that's one of the things he said was even clamping pressure along the length of the piece, because the diagram he showed us was your clamp, has a round hole about this long. So, but the pressure exerted is in a cone shape.
Okay. Incoming communication.
So the pressure is in a cone shape. So under each clamp, there's a cone shape going out. And the other side of the clamp is a cone shape. But even pressure, I think we all know that, but it just solidified some stuff when I think about when you're trying to glue something that's 3 foot long. You don't put a clamp on one end, put a clamp on the other end, and put a clamp in the middle and call that clamped. Okay. Not unless you have steel bars running along the length of it, and those steel bars are thick enough that the clamping pressure on those 3 clamps are clamping down along the whole entire piece. So when you see people putting multiple right after another clamps on a long piece, that is a good thing. That is what you're supposed to do, so to speak. So even clamp pressure is one of those things that I learned, which is really good. Another myth or another thing that I thought, I've never used this, and I've always thought it like, really? I don't know if that's a good idea. And that is, if you're having problems with a joint slipping a little bit, you can put some salt on the joint. Now, in a 6-inch piece, you don't use a whole pound of salt. But if you sprinkle a little bit of salt along the edge and clamp the two, the salt will give you enough resistance to hold the two kind of an even while the clamps are trying to set, to help even it out so you have so much slippage in between that. I didn't think it was a great idea. He said the salt is, if you don't put the whole pound on there, the salt is water soluble. Titebond 3 is a mixture with water in it, so it will dissolve the salt and there won't be any problems. So that is actually a good thing. So
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a good thing, but you can do it.
I've used that a lot over the years when you got to do something real quick and you don't want to mess around trying to clamp everything together and try to get everything all even and stuff. Salt works real well.
Yep.
Like you said, it does dissolve and it gives you just enough grip so that by the time you get your clamps all squared away, then you're good.
Yep.
Hey, one more thing, since it's non-toxic also, it makes it taste better too. When
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
So,
Martin Cole on the chat says they call that seasoned firewood.
Seasoned
I
firewood.
agree with them 100%.
Yeah. So Titebond is a mixture of some of water, polymers, and like some acetated something, whatever. He had come up with some name that they put together. And what it does is and it does have water in it. Okay. So what it does is when it starts drying, it just solidifies the plastic. If you look at it under the microscope, and he showed us, the plastic is like little round balls inside of that jelly that it's in. But once it dries, it kind of like melts or solidifies that plastic out into a solid form. Okay. So that was pretty interesting. I didn't realize that. And so that's the reason they call it PVA, polyvinyl acetate. So the acetate is the acetates that are making up the stuff mixed with the water that react with the poly balls, which solidifies them and makes them into a long chain, which I know I'm not getting this all right, but you understand what I'm saying. That's how it works. So water is kind of a good thing in a way. We had a guy bring up the point that he's a cabinet maker, and he was having problems gluing the face plates of his cabinets onto the plywood. And you're looking at plywood as being not only an ingrain problem, but a multi-ingrain problem, because if it's a thick plywood, it could have 5 or 6 layers upon layers across there. So he was having problems with that. Well, now I have done it before in some of my personal projects when it came with ingrain and MDF and stuff of that, was I took a little bit of Titebond and put it in a cup and I put water in it and thinned it down and used a paintbrush and painted the edges and gave it a few minutes and then come back and glued and put my piece together. He actually said that was a great idea, no problem. But he came up with an idea that I didn't even think of. He told the guy to get a little squirt bottle and don't flood the joint with a ton of water, but go along and squirt the edges of the plywood with a little water and apply your glue and stick them together. Being there's water in Titebond, when it connects with that ingrain or that plywood or any grain material, think about ingrain. What is it doing? Once it makes contact with that Titebond, it's sucking the water right out of it. So if you put something, spritz it with a little water, and then when you put the Titebond glue on there, it's not wanting to, it's already kind of wet, so it's not wanting to suck all the water out of the Titebond, and you'll get a better glue joint. So
Russ,
I did not know that.
Did they talk about taking your finger and pushing into the end grain as a technique that would work? Did they mention that? Because I know some people will kind of shove it in with their finger first time.
Yeah, he didn't mention that. But like I told him, and I've done it on MDF. When I'm wanting to glue MDF together sometimes, I will take a little Titebond and water and I'll run it, take a paintbrush and paint the edge of the MDF and wait a few minutes, then put my glue down and then set the other piece on. And that seems to work really good as far as help. And they didn't think about it, but with the mixing it with water, actually it's just the water sucking into the MDF and creating, so it doesn't, what they're saying is it's not sucking all the water out of the Titebond immediately when it makes the contact, so to speak. That's what I got out of it.
Cool.
So yeah, so that's another thing. And I was like, wow, just those squirts with the water and then put the Titebond on there. Because water can be a friend, but it also can be an enemy in a way. You don't want oily woods. For instance, your babingas, your purple hearts, your bloodwood, all those woods that are really oily. Now, in the past, when I've had problems with those woods, I've used alcohol to clean the edges of the woods before I'm glued them together, kind of dry them out. Alcohol is a polar solvent. Alcohol will mix with oil or it'll mix with water. Either one. It goes both ways. It's not a problem. So alcohol, he mentioned that actually acetone was the best thing that they have found out as far as to clean off those. So if you're gluing a couple of pieces of really exotic wood that are really oily, use acetone to clean the both edges really good and dry them out, and then apply the glue and then stick them together. You'll get a much better bond that way because it cleans out the oil off the edges and gives the Titebond a chance to go in. Titebond, this is all rushing back in my mind. Titebond loves cellulose, and wood is made up of cellulose materials along the edges. So it loves that cellulose. So as soon as you apply it, it wants to go in there and get a hold of that cellulose on your edges. Don't burnish your edges. Don't sand them. Don't sand them to 600 grit. You're burnishing the edges, and it's going to have a hard time for the Titebond to enter into the cellulose, into the edges or the grip of the wood, and get in there and make a nice bond. So that's another thing I learned was don't sand. You want it to be. I mean, you want it to be kind of rough, but not too rough. If you get what I'm saying.
Did he say anything about on end grain if the glue tries to wick itself into the wood?
Yes, that's what
it just sucks the water out.
Yes, and that's what I was referring back to. What we were talking about with end grain is the same as MDF in the end of the plywood. Is what happens is as soon as you apply it, the water is going to go right into the end grain. So that's what hurts the Titebond. It's trying to suck all the water out of it. So
yeah, but does the Titebond go with it?
No, the molecular structure of the Titebond don't go with it, but it sucks all the water out. But it actually needs the water in the curing process, if you get what I'm saying, so to speak. So in other words, so if you have end grain material that you're trying to glue, you might want to add a little water to it before, and then apply the glue and give it a little bit so that Titebond has a chance to set in there, so to speak, so it doesn't suck all the water out of it. I hope, Steve French, you're not out there helping me, buddy.
It acts almost like a sizing compound,
Yeah.
It'll seal it up enough where it's not going to draw the next layer in, and it'll actually create a strong
right
bond.
It just dampens the wood. And he didn't say stick it in water overnight. He just said take a little spray bottle and squirts along the edge on some of your end grain stuff that you're having problems with, on the plywood and stuff. He told the cabinet maker that just to get it wet, just a little damp, so that once you apply the Titebond, the wood is not just wanting to suck the water straight out of the material and leave it standing. It gives it that little bit of extra. Hey there, TJ Woodworking Shop. I need to take like a couple of minute break here, and I will be right back. So if one of y'all want to talk about something real quick, go ahead. It was a long trip home, so.
Okay. Now, is it just me, or did Titebond 3 in the past used to say water resistant, or did Titebond 3 always say waterproof?
Always.
I've always seen it to be waterproof.
I thought I saw some video where they were doing a review and they mentioned that it was waterproof on both.
I heard if you didn't have water to do the end grain, you could lick the glue into the end grain, and it just
there is you
Both before and after you apply the glue.
yes.
Now, what are the thoughts on eating Titebond 2? Is it good or bad for you?
It's
It'll,
non-toxic.
it'll
Right
stick
out
your
of-
ribs.
Right out of the
Sneaky
bottle.
question there, Matt. Very sticky.
Did John say sticks to your ribs?
Yes, I did.
Well, it is food safe, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
you would get very constipated, I would think.
Well, I guess sniffing glue is a thing of the past.
Oh, yeah, not even
Don't
once.
work with that.
Don't do that, kids.
They got hand
It's a
sanitizer for that now.
You can
It is
sniff
a
all the Titebond you want.
non-toxic, solvent-free, and cleans up with water. Safer to use than traditional waterproof glues.
Now, would you choose Ritz or saltines with your
Ritz.
Titebond 2?
Ritz, hands down.
Definitely. Yeah.
I like wheat thins.
Wheat thins are good too. You get those flavored ones.
Yeah.
Triscuits for me.
So
Oh,
what
we got a
kind of
Triscuit
wine?
fan over there. That's old school.
So
If you went with the wheat thins, what kind of wine would you use with that, Katie? You get wheat thins, and then the Titebond 3 is going to be a little browner, so you might want a red with that one. If you use Titebond 2, it's still going to be lighter, so you may want to just stick with a white. Oh,
Okay,
I
so
just
you're-
I just like a nice Riesling wine.
So you already
Okay.
got off the subject talking about wine.
No, we're talking
Oh, we're
about
talking about glue.
Tim
No,
got
we're
some,
not talking about glue. What wine goes with what glue?
Yeah.
hey, Matt, as
Edible.
a Starfleet officer, what glue do you use aboard the ship?
Titebond 2 all the way, baby.
Titebond
There you
2.
go.
Huh?
Yes.
Titebond 2. I use Titebond 3.
2.
Now that
1, 2.
one of the things that Titebond 3 that you have to realize is it's not as transparent as the Titebond 2. So
it
you
does dry a little darker, doesn't it?
yeah, it does dry a little darker. And he had, for instance, a guy, since you brought that up, put a table together. And some of the people have been complaining about the Titebond 3 on exterior wood when they're building like a picnic table and using it, that it's leaving dark lines in the middle of it. And he said that's kind of unusual. It's because it's not supposed to happen, although they have found out it does occur, but more so in woods that have a high count of what is called something acid, tyanic acid.
Tannic acid.
Yeah, in the woods. And let me
Yeah,
explain
like
that. Is, for instance, if you have anybody ever taken steel wool and put vinegar in it and making that and put it on there, and that reacts, the tyanic acid made from that reacts to the wood and makes it change a different color? Well, what he was saying is, in like oak, you're right, Katie, and a few others that have high tyanic acid in the wood itself, it can cause a discoloration in the Titebond 3. He had a guy that was using a wood that called in and said, I'm using it, I get this gray lines and everything. He got to talking about it. It was not a wood with that kind of high concentrate. He was racking his brains. He was talking about it and talking about it. Finally, he said, Bob said, something just popped in his mind. He goes, okay, that wood has nothing to do with metal and everything. He said, do you do metalworking? And the guy said, yes, I do. And he goes, oh, you have a metal wood shop and a woodworking wood shop? He goes, yes. He said, did you sand that wood with the same sandpaper that you were sand with your metal? And he said there was a pause kind of over the phone. He goes, why, yes. He says, well, you're introducing metal into the wood and the wood glue line because you're sanding it. And now you're introducing the glue, so that metal shavings, that fine dust of metal, can cause that tyanic, think about it, wood, and the shavings are causing that kind of reaction, and that's the reason it's having in your glue lines. So
Anybody that's
chemistry.
done any leather working and whatnot, when you start to tool leather, you won't. Most of them go for what is called oak tanned leather or oak tanned hides,
Right.
because it was the tannic acid in the oaks and probably some other trees too that was originally used to tan hides.
So make a long story short, don't have a metal shop and a woodworking shop side by side and use the same sandpaper, because that's what they kind of come down to figure out, that what it was. And he said that he gave me his business card and said that if you call that number that's on the back of the Titebond bottle, if he's not there, you'll get his department if you have problems, and they will work with you to try. They want to find out if you're having problems. He extremely expressed wanted to help people with the problems so that they would enjoy or like the product. They're not shying away from them. If you, one of the things he said is, we ask people if they're having problems, send us a piece of it to see what's going on. And we would love to have that piece to be able to see it in the, and analyze it and see what failed, what caused the failure. If it's our glue, we'll admit to it. But if it's not, we're going to tell you, hey, this is what you did wrong. So
their customer service is pretty good, Russ. I called them up about my Titebond too. It was clumped up and it was clumping up and stuff like that. And they figured out it's because I left it in my shop. I don't have any heat or AC in my shop. And over a year, the extreme heat in South Carolina in that metal shop versus the extreme cold in the metal shop, they offered to send me some more. So that was nice of them.
That's another thing, storage.
I store it inside my house now.
Yes, you need to keep it inside your house. If it gets extremely hot and extremely cold, actually one time he says not too bad. But if it happens again, you can pretty well forget it. And Titebond does have a shelf life of like 1 year. And there is the code. He taught us how to read the code on the bottle to be able to tell when you bought the bottle, it has a code, or when the bottle was manufactured, to be able to read that code on that bottle. But it does have a shelf life. But he said in the same aspect, if it's kept in the proper environment, like in your house, which is normally under a regulated humidity temperature type environment, it could last up to 10 years. That's not a problem. So you can't leave it in your shop exposed to the elements and expect it to be any good, especially for more than a year, if that's what you're going to do. So
well, a little tip there would be like what I've done is I don't buy it a gallon size because I don't use it fast enough. But
yeah,
when I buy a new bottle of wood glue, I'll take a Sharpie and I'll put the date on it. And if it's over 2 years, I toss it.
Yeah.
I use about a gallon of it every 6 months, so I buy the big gallon one. So.
One of the things that came in mind real quick that I learned about it, and I'm sorry this is just haphazard information that I'm just throwing out there. I really do apologize for that, because I'm just I didn't take notes that night. I didn't think about it and didn't video it. I don't know that they allow video, because I've actually invited Bob to be on my show later on down the road. And he's going to he has to have, everything has to be approved. When he comes to talk to woodworking clubs and does these things, they all have to be approved by the upper echelon and management. So what I'm supposed to do is, he gave me his business card and his email address. He said, give him a little get back to the office, but go ahead and email him and he will present that to them and see if he can come on the show and actually talk to us. And so that is hopefully something that he can't tell me yes, he can't tell me no. They'll have to look at it and say, yes, yeah, that's good. Go and talk to all those people. So we'll hear about that in the future. So it's kind of haphazardly thing, as when I'm telling you about this stuff, is because it's coming off the top of my head. And one of the things I did want to tell you about is, if you have a very large project that you're trying to glue up, you need to get that done. Titebond needs to be done within 5 minutes. Yeah, you can't wait around, because what is happening is, the moment that you start applying that glue, the process has begun to start the adhesion process between the two pieces. So the very moment you start laying that glue out, he said that actually, if you got a very big project and you want to know the time, put you a clock up there or a egg timer and set it for 5 minutes and keep watching it, because that's the time that you need to have this project done, and gluing it and with the clamps and putting it on together. Because after that 5 minutes of sitting, the adhesion gets to a point that it no longer wants to make or bond really well anymore. So it has kind of like you have a 5 minute window of applying. Now, if it's a
5 minute window, do you just clamp it harder?
Well, you don't want to use, and that's another thing about the even clamping pressure. You do not want to use too much pressure. You can actually get too much pressure and squeeze the glue out. My father used to tell me, and I asked him that question in front of everybody. My father used to tell me, when you clamp something with glue, clamp it hard enough till you start getting a good squeeze out and stop. And I asked him that, and he said, that's exactly right. You don't want to put so much pressure on there that you're squeezing out all the glue, because then guess what? It's not going to work. So it's got to be enough pressure. You're getting a good squeeze out on it, and you say, oh, yeah, it's squeezing out all over the place. That's really good. And the piece has even pressure, but in the same aspect, you keep typing those clamps, and it's going to keep squeezing out the glue. You're going to get to a point when there is no more glue. You're to wood, and then you break it apart, and then it falls off, and you're going, why the heck did that fail? Well, there was no glue in there because you squeezed it all out with the clamps. So it's kind of like
I have a minor question.
Huh?
I have a minor question, just
Sure.
a minor. So, it kind of goes along the same lines as the even pressure with the clamps, but smoothing out the glue versus just going zigzag. I mean, when you clamp it, it does kind of all smush out anyway. Is there really any difference between smoothing it out with your finger or one of those rubber paint brushes versus just...
Yes, there is.
I can answer that.
Yes, there is, and no, there is not. There needs to be the brushes that you buy, and he gave me one, and it's out in my truck. He gave us he gave us samples and some brushes. Those the plastic barbecue brushes, or the plastic gluing brushes that have the fat little rubber fingers that stick out or whatever.
The
those
silicone
are
ones?
designed
Yeah,
to,
they're silicone.
Yeah, the silicone ones. You know what I'm talking about. Those are designed to, when you spread the glue out, to spread it out accurately at the thickness level that it needs to be. There's a reason to their madness. They just didn't say, hey, let's make this silicone brush and make these little things that stick out at a fatness this thick and this long or whatever. Those are actually designed by companies to spread the glue at the proper ratio.
But does the thickness really matter when it all smooshes down?
Yes and no, it does, but it's not going to make the glue joint fail in any way, shape, or form. If you have a large piece, let's say I'm doing a 2 foot long by 4 foot long piece, and I dump a bunch of glue out on there and I'm trying to spread it. Well, that little glue brush ain't going to work. Those little notch trowels that you buy for like vinyl and linoleum that you can buy in Home Depot that have the 2/32 or the little tiny V notches all the way around. Those are like 2/32 or 3/32 deep. Those are perfect. Actually, those brushes that we're talking about make those same type of marks on your material. So if you have a piece and you can't use that little brush, go get to one of those trowels that you use for the vinyl glue or whatever for linoleum and stuff. Those little, not the big 1/8 inch teeth, the little tiny teeth. Spread it with that and get it even with that, with those little marks all over it, and that's the perfect thickness for what it should be.
Hey Russ, I'd like to address that real quick. We talk about how it squishes it down. I always see comments on Facebook or on YouTube videos and on mine. You're using too much glue. There is no such thing as using too much glue, but there is such thing as starving your joints for glue. Yes. Okay, you can put too little, but if you have too much, that just means you're wasting a little bit of glue. And I'd rather see that than somebody starving.
Oh yes, if you had a preference one to another, so to speak, then I would definitely say put more on than you need than less, because you don't starve. But it goes back to too much clamping pressure. You're starving your joint.
Yeah, well, I use a roller. I've got the little Walmart. They have the little red tiny roller things they sell for $3. I buy those, put glue in there, and you get an extra roller, and that's what I use to put on all my glue.
Yeah.
Roller out afterwards, or
okay,
throw it away.
The roller I just leave inside the little package. It's good for at least a month, and then once it's done, it starts getting hard. I take it off. And I put it over onto on a new one on the roller.
Question, for instance, is there is there a difference between gluing one side and putting it together, or gluing both sides and putting it together? Is there a difference? Would you say?
I wouldn't think so.
I wouldn't think so. I only glue one side, though. I think you put too much glue if you glue both sides. But
Anybody else?
It depends on the type of glue it is. If it's an adhesive glue, like what Matt used on.
No, we're talking about PVA.
PVA, I would think that it would be a little bit wood dependent, because you were talking about earlier how, like on the end grain, it begins to soak up the moisture from the glue.
Right.
And then if you're only applying glue to one side, then is the bare side going to try to, we're not talking end grain here, but is the other side going to try to take up moisture to even the balance? And
right, I understand what you're saying, but they done tests and it actually makes no difference. As long as the amount of glue that's in between the joint is enough, it doesn't matter if you do one or both.
For me, I think it's better if you use both sides sometimes, because if you here's my reason though. If you're gluing something together and you can't see the part that you're putting another part on,
well, now in that case, I would agree.
Glue on both sides, and it's.
But if you're doing two befores together, and you only put glue on one and they're right in front of you, and you glue the two befores together, it absolutely makes no difference whatsoever. They done tests and said one joint will hold just as good as the other. But the secret to that is if you have adequately enough glue for the joint. In other words, the first piece you put the glue on is really well covered and saturated. Then when you glue the two pieces together and you got the nice squeeze out, it absolutely makes no difference if it's one sided or two sided. And I've done that for years. To be honest with you, I've only glued one side, as long as that one side's covered and stuck together, and I've never had a glue failure. I know people think there's a difference, and I always thought there was a difference too, because I've always heard that, but I just do one side and never had a glue failure. All right. So I'm going to get these amount.
We've got a lot of flat earth two-siders out there.
Yeah, I know.
Dixon.
Well, he said there is absolutely no wrong. If you want to do both sides, do both sides. But in the test that they have done, it showed it didn't matter. As long
as if you're wasting glue, that's money in their pocket.
It's better for them to have you do both sides so they get more money out of you.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I don't believe that, Russ. I call BS. Woody Walnut said that. Now I'll pull it out. I don't disagree with you. When he told me, he said, but they did test after test after test on the PSI strength of the glue, and it absolutely made no difference whether it was one side or the other.
You would think that if they really wanted you to glue both sides, they'd advertise it.
Yes. Why? I agree with you, John. I think somebody else mentioned that earlier, and I just kind of skipped over it, and I'm sorry if I did that to you. But you're right, John. If they wanted to sell their glue, they would tell you glue both sides. And then you come back years later and go, oh, that's actually not true. You could have glued one side all these years. Now, would you not be upset?
Would do anything different, because you're clamping it together, and the force of the clamp is going to put equal pressure on either side. So I can see that it wouldn't make a difference either way.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make it. And I believe this guy too. After you watch his presentation and everything and listen to him, and I know enough about woodworking. I've been doing it long enough to know if he was BSing me, so to speak, and I really don't feel in any way, shape, or form he was. So,
Well, I have a question, Russ.
Yes.
What about gluing wood to other mediums like metal or plastic?
Yes. PVA glue is not designed for that.
Okay.
PVA glue. We're talking about Titebond, Titebond 2, original Titebond, and their little PVA, which Elmer's Glue also makes a PVA glue. That's their competition, so to speak, Elmer's. So
Gorilla makes a PVA
yes,
glue.
polyvinyl acetate. That's what we're talking about. The wood glue little section, because there's polyurethane glues, that is the Gorilla Glue, which you put in between two joints and it foams up. That's the polyurethane type of glues. Now we're strictly talking about Titebond 2, the original Titebond, I believe, and Titebond 3. Those are the ones we're.
Now, did they say anything about using it in paint? Because I know a lot of the acrylic artists are doing the acrylic pours and they're using PVA glue in their paint along with other things.
They didn't mention that. Although they did mention about gluing painted surfaces together. And the problem being with the painted surfaces with PVA glues, whether it be Elmer's or whatever, is the fact that they want the cellulose to bond to. They mix this glue so that there's cellulose in this wood and there's cellulose in this wood and there's PVA in the middle. And the PVA loves cellulose. So when you put them together, it's going to the cellulose and bond with it really nicely. And then all that magic happens in between to perform the glue line, if you get what I'm saying. So if you're painting the surface or shellacking the surface or staining the surface, that becomes a problem. It will work. It can work, but that's one of those things that it's just really not guaranteed because of the fact it wants the cellulose to bond to.
Well,
something like that. Sorry, Katie, but something like that is when you would go on an epoxy, because epoxy doesn't care. It's probably going to latch onto that stuff and just go ahead. And we talked about that.
For the acrylic pour, what they do is they take acrylic paint and they put PVA glue, water, and Floetrol in it, and then they pour it over top of a canvas or some
I know what
surface.
you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I was wondering if
he
you
didn't talk
mentioned
about that.
Okay.
Gorilla Glue sucks. Gorilla Glue, I have used it and I've had success with it, and I've used it and I've not had success with it. But now you have to realize Gorilla Glue makes different types of glue. They make a polyurethane type, they make a PVA, and they make a cyanic acrylate, which is
CA glue.
Yeah, CA glue, which is super glue. So they have difference. The polyurethane is totally different base than the PVA, and it's totally different from the super glue. The polyurethane, which is they're famous for, is the expanding foam. And we talked about those type of glues. And I'm not downing polyurethane if you want to use that, but they give one of those things that it's gap filling. Well, it is. And I always thought that okay, that's pretty cool. It fills up gaps. But what he said made sense is that, let's say you have two pieces of wood and you have a little gap in it. Well, it foams up in between to fill those gaps, right? So you got a good bond over here and you got a good bond over here, and it filled that gap, but what's in the middle? The foam. Is the foam structurally sound for a glue? Not if it's in a good joint where you're going to have a lot of friction, like a table leg or something there, or a chair leg that you're going to be sitting on all the time. The weakest form of that glue, it filled the joint, but the weakest form is that space in between, which is nothing but foam. And the foam, I can tell you, and I had a failure joint on a glue joint just with that, trying to use Gorilla Glue, and that's what turned it off from me, is because, it's gap forming. All right, I'm off a little bit, 32nd of an inch. I'll just fill it with Gorilla Glue and it's gap forming.
I've had picture frames come apart with that expanding foam Gorilla
Glue.
Because it's not that much surface. If you have a large surface, I guess you're better off.
Yes.
But just two little pieces, I would not use it.
Yeah.
The polyurethane glue, where I have used it, and it's the last I saw them that they were still holding. It was a friend had one of the handles come off of her limb loppers, and it was loose, and I had drilled a hole to put a screw through it so that would hold it. But I also slapped that sucker full of Gorilla foam and glue, and which we're not talking aesthetics here. We're just trying to keep the handle on the tool, and that worked in that case. You know, of course.
Right. And I'm not and here was the thing that I liked about this guy is we knew he was from Titebond.
Yes.
All right. No doubt about it. But yet during his presentation, he talked about PVA glues, period. He really didn't elaborate that. I mean, he did in some aspects that we do this extensively and done extensively tests for Titebond, but he was talking about PVA glues, which is Elmer's, Titebond, and all the PVA glues, how they work, how they're constructed, how they make their bonds and everything else. So even though it was a Titebond commercial, he gave you information that you could understand what he was talking about without really, you could take let's say you could take half of his presentation and take it out and you wouldn't even know when he was talking about Titebond. And I like that in the way he gave it to it, because he wasn't shoving Titebond down your throat. He was telling you how the glue works, how it bonds, what's best to use it on, what's not best to use it on, and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed the presentation. The man did almost 2 hours worth of presentation. He held my attention, and I didn't think in the beginning when I got there that he would ever be able to do that for 2 hours, but he did. But it wasn't worthless BS that he was giving us. It was a lot of information that we were able to digest, understand, to be able to understand how your glue joints work and why they fail. So
getting back to dry time, I don't know if it's still available. I haven't checked, but I know years ago Titebond had a product they called Extend, which is another PVA glue, and that would extend your open time to like 15-20 minutes. So if you had a large panel or a large glue up that you were doing, you wouldn't really have to worry about it tacking up before
right.
You got it clamped up. So
yeah,
but I would encourage anybody to go to the Titebond website and check it out. Yeah, and they have all kinds of stuff on there.
Yeah, and not only they have all kinds of stuff, but like I said, that 1-800 number that's on the back of that Titebond bottle, they will try their best to get you the information that you need and tell you what happened, or try to talk to you through if you have a failure of their glue. Because I mean, he really left me the impression, because he brought some stuff that people had sent to him of failures, and he showed us why they failed. It wasn't, and you could go up there and look at them, and once he showed you that, like the one guy was squeezing them so hard he was like had a failure. But when he said, well, send me that piece or a section of that piece so I can see it, but then when they broke it apart, they could see there was hardly no glue in there. He over clamped it. It was way too much pressure on it. So I know I'm not getting 100% of what this man told me, but I do remember enough that I can share with you that I hope helps you out there. I thought for a long time the salt people, and I know there's been people, Izzy Swan has mentioned it. And I respect Izzy Swan for knowing a lot of stuff. And there's been several other woodworkers that have told about putting salt in the glue joint. And I always was really hesitant about doing that. I'm like, I don't know, that's a good idea. The sodium and the salt could mix with the chemicals of the PVA and cause some problems and everything else. And I was like,
Russ was afraid it was going to blow up.
No, well, I wasn't afraid to blow it up. Then I'm trying to think of Nick Ferry. Nick Ferry does that. And Nick Ferry told me about doing that. And he actually did a video, I think, or I had mentioned that on his website or something. I read about Nick Ferry saying that too. And I respect Nick Ferry. And I'm not in a million years thinking that he was telling me or lead me down the wrong trail, and he'd probably done it. I just thought that wasn't such a good idea. But after hearing Bob from Titebond say, oh, it's not going to hurt anything, a little bit of salt.
Well, so if a woodworker tells you to go pound salt, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah. So he's like, don't use a whole pound of salt in the middle of a 6-inch piece joint, but if you sprinkle a little bit in there and it helps, yeah.
Now, baking soda and CA glue is a fun thing to work with. If you're trying to fill a gap or something.
You know what? The problem with using CA glues in woodworking is, and I love CA glue. And I
Porous material?
nope. And I didn't really knew this. I knew it, but I didn't know it. But and I was like, wow, I never thought about it that way. But the CA glue I'm a CP2P10 from Fast Cap Fanatic. You can see it up here right there. I love 2P10. The CA and the PVA glue actually moves and bends. It's kind of I won't say it bends, but you get what I'm saying. It kind of has a little bit of give in it, so to speak. So as the wood moves and everything, it stays put with the wood, but moves with the wood. CA is a real hard glue, and it can, if the wood moves too much, it can actually snap the joint because it can't give with the movement of the glue.
They say CA glue is brittle. Is that what you're
Yes,
getting?
brittle.
Yes.
It's very brittle. It works great if you're doing small pieces or whatever. You're putting, like my scroll saw project, to break a piece off, put a little CA glue on it, and with the accelerator and glue it back together. Yeah, not a problem, because we're talking about pieces that are so small. But if you're gluing a table together with CA glue, and yeah, there could be a problem because it's not designed.
CA glue in my 30 for 30. And I'll tell you what, somebody asked me this, said, are you using that because it's good for what you're doing, or are you using that because of time? I said, I'm using it because of time. If I use wood glue, I got to wait for it to glue. Now, I went back and I put screws in I put the CA glue, the stuff I used the regular Titebond 3 on, I didn't have to go back and put screws in.
Yeah. Somebody said CA glue, no flexibility in CA glue. Dickinson Hossman said no flexibility in CA glue. Yes, you're exactly right. Steve French. Hey, Steve French, am I doing a good job explaining this from what Bob did? I didn't realize you were still out there because you haven't said anything. I would like to hear from you, Steve, to see if I've pretty well explained some of the stuff, or am I missing anything?
Russ, here's a question from Jeff Robinson while we're waiting for Steve to chime in. He wants to know about the white PVA glue and if there's a difference between that and the regular form.
The white PVA, is he talking about the original Titebond, which was white colored? And then Titebond 2 is yellow colored. And then Titebond 3 is kind of like a brownish color. I need to know that significance.
Well, I would think like Elmer's.
Actually, there's a little bit of difference in the formulation, but not in anything structural. The original Titebond was not waterproof or water resistant in any way, shape, or form. It was strictly built for indoor use. So if you use the original, which is like the old original yellow or white Elmer's glue, and it gets wet, it's going to come apart. That's the original. They went to the Titebond 2, which would make it water resistant, which to me is waterproof. You know, it's a technicality. That's the Titebond 2, and it still dries clear. Then the Titebond 3 is waterproof. It'll go through boiling water. The problem of it being is you can have a problem with it not being crystal clear. It can have a darker glue line in there. That's the difference between those three, so to speak. But if it's the original Titebond, the white glue, it pretty well meets up with all the others. It's just not water. If any water comes in contact with it, if you use it on a tabletop and gluing some pieces together, and somebody sets a glass on it, that water from the glass soaking down into it could possibly let the glue come apart. If you're doing on a picture frame or of something that you're going to hang on display of a wall where you don't have to worry about any contact of any water, then you could actually use the original Titebond, and it's going to work just as good as any others.
The thing I've been chasing is a glue that'll work on polyethylene, which that's not a woodworking thing.
Yeah,
and I may have found something I found a way to glue the rigid polyethylenes. But what I was hoping for was something that would glue the polyethylene tarps, and I've come up with 0 on that. But as far as the rigid polyethylene, recently, or I don't know how it's been out there, Loctite has a little kit. It's $3 to $5 depending on where you get it. It's a tiny tube of CA glue, and this little tube, it's not an accelerator, it's a more or less a conditioner. And I got that because I had a little small project that we were working on, and there's barely anything in the accelerator thing, and they don't tell you what it is. So I looked at the MSDS sheet on it, which it says it's some stuff called N-heptane. Heptane has been out there for eons. There's a brand called Bestine made by Speedball, and it's used to thin contact cement.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take just a tiny bit and just rub down or the two surfaces that you want to glue, and it doesn't take it, very little. And at this point, it looks like the CA glue will work, but that's with rigid polyethylene. On the tarps that I tried, the tarp scraps that I tried, it actually did glue the polyethylene, but it caused the polyethylene to turn loose of the structural material. On a poly tarp, you've got two layers of polyethylene, but you've got some kind of fabric or strengthening material in between. But it causes the polyethylene to turn loose of the structural material. So I still can't do tarps.
Steve Carmichael brought up, and I don't mind talking about other products. Don't get me wrong. I'm not a total Titebond fanatic. And I do realize that Gorilla Wood Glue makes PVA glues, not just only their polyurethanes and their CA, but they make, and he brought up something. Let me go back. He goes,
He's talking about the white PVA glue.
Yeah, the white Gorilla Glue. He says, I use Gorilla Glue. It's white and dries more clear than the Titebond yellow and less noticeable. Okay, that's good to know, Steve. I appreciate you putting that out there in there. And he went on to say that yes, and I agree. Titebond, the white, or Gorilla Glue, the white one that they have out there, is a PVA glue. He says yes, and it's water resistant. Okay, I did not know that. But he says it's not. It doesn't have the crappy yellow color, so it's white, so to speak.
I think it tastes better too.
Wooden stuff. Steve French is out there. What does Steve French say that? Same with Titebond, quick and thick. It does on white and goes in slightly the right way. Yeah, they have a new one out that is what they say. I'd say it's new because I didn't know about it. It's quick and thick, and it's a white glue, and it's really thick, and it sets like in. It's made for woodworkers or carpenters that are doing trim work. So in other words, if you have a piece of trim that you need to put up, but yet there's not anywhere to put any nails or whatever, you can actually put the stuff on the joint and put it along the edges and stick it up. It reminds me of that commercial for Loctite. And I don't know if y'all seen that, where the guy's nailing up some siding or some stuff in his house or his apartment, and right next door his neighbor's over there. And the neighbor walks in because he gets tired of that nailing and takes his hammer away from him and takes the Loctite out and squirts it all over the hammer and sticks his hammer up on the ceiling. and waits a few seconds and pulls it down, and then he hands him that and says, in other words, put this stuff on with the Loctite. Y'all ever
That's
seen
a
that
great commercial. That's a great commercial.
That's
I
a
love
great
it.
commercial. Whatever.
Yes, it is.
It
I
is, but
remember it.
Loctite, in all sincerity, I tried the Loctite and it sucks. It don't work like they say it does. I have tried it. I will tell you on multiple types of material and multiple things, and it sucks. So it's not a good glue.
When I first ran across an advertisement for the Thick and Quick a couple of years back, and it's hard to find. But when they first put it out there, it was talking about, excuse me, it being better for gluing up end grains.
Steve Carmichael is saying, yeah, Steve, that's right. He says, haha, I tasted Titebond in my pepperoni pizza video and oregano on it, and haven't tried Gorilla yet.
No, but Steve, I appreciate you, Steve Carmichael. I appreciate you being out there in the chat and giving that information, because that's good to know. I'm not preaching Titebond. I like Titebond. He just happened to be the guy that was there that night at the woodworking, and he has a lot of a great wealth of information about PVA glues, so to speak. So if you like Gorilla Glue, the white wood glue, Gorilla Glue, and you say it's what, I mean, that's great information. And I want to say, hey, I believe what Steve's saying. I trust Steve in saying that. So that's good information. That's what I wanted was some reaction to say, hey, I've used this glue and done it with this thing, and it's worked great, because I'm not preaching Titebond. I just happen to be in he said, Steve French pointed out, Titebond Quick and Thick is the exact same glue they sell in the trim and molding bottle. And that's what we were talking about. If you're doing cabinets and you really don't want the nails in the cabinets trim, you can use that Titebond, what do you say?
Quick and Thick?
No, the trim and molding bottle. Titebond makes a trim and molding glue, and it's the same stuff as the new Quick and Thick stuff. They're the same thing. They just put it in a different bottle because people weren't trying to use it except on wooden molding, but it can be used in a bunch of different applications. But let's say you have a piece of trim. Let's say it's like 3 inches long. And it's between these other two pieces that meet on the cabinet. And you don't want to put nails in it because it'll be show, or you're worried about it. Have you ever tried a piece of trim that's really so small? Because I have. And you get your little bride nailer up there and you go pow. And as soon as it goes through it, it goes and breaks. And you go like, dang it. Because you got to go back out and cut another piece.
That wasn't the word I used.
Well, it's PG-13 here, and I don't think, God forgive me, but I don't think I use those words either. So anyway, but this stuff is supposed to be so you put it along the edges and stick it up there. And he said, give it 10 seconds. Count 1001, 1000. I'm holding my hands up too high. You can't see. I'm holding this fictitious piece of wood up here. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1010. And he said, let it go. And he says, it will stay there. It won't come down. He says, we've actually taken it out there on the job sites and told them, try this stuff and put it up there and use it. And they did it, and they went like, oh my God, where's this crap been all these years? So
is the Quick and Thick more like a multi-purpose, multi-material type?
Well, when I say it's still a wood glue, it will, but yes, it is so thick and it sets really quick that it works really good between the wood surfaces, like trim on the cabinets. You have wooden cabinets and you're putting up wooden trim. It sticks to that stuff real good. Crown molding, as you're putting in your home, good for the crown molding places where, how many times have you ever, I put up tons of crown molding, and you go along walls and you can't find, especially with that big 5 1/4 crown, you can't find a dead burn stud within 100 miles of where you want a nail or need a nail. Sometimes you have to take your nailer. I use a finish nailer with 3-inch finish nails, and sometimes you You have your 5-inch crown and you'll nail it this way and then turn around and nail it this way right behind the other nail so that the nails going in create an X in the plywood to hold it up there.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing back there.
I've run into that. I use
Yeah.
a little V shot.
Yeah.
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Steve
you
says it works good on other things, rocks, plastic, painted surfaces.
Oh, well, you see, now Steve knows that. So thank you, Steve. It's multi-purpose, works on things like rocks, plastic, painted surfaces, and et cetera, et cetera. Thank you, Steve, for being out there and answering that. Yeah, see, so he's used that glue before. I just found out about it the other night. That's the first time I knew about it. So he's used that glue before.
Russ, I could tell you the best adhesive you'll ever find anywhere.
Contact cement.
No, grit. Have you ever made grits and left the
contact cement will glue Superman's butt to the toilet seat.
I know, but have you ever made grits and left it in the sink and then you got
that's the good thing.
Can't get them off.
Yeah, if you can find Superman to stand still long enough to paint his butt and then put it on the toilet seat when he sits down, he'll never get up.
Grits are edible too.
Yeah.
Contact cement, some bad stuff, buddy. I've used it before.
Put my carpet in my Corvette. So.
Yeah, it's some good stuff.
Unless you're in Texas in that heat and it peels right back up. So
yeah.
I ain't never had it. I've never had contact cement. If you do it right, I've never had a contact cement. I have had it fail, but it was my fault. It was not. You got to get it where you can put your hand on it and it won't stick. That's when they stick together. And mine was still tacky, and I said, "The hell with it. We're going to put it down because I ain't got enough time for this crap." And we put that across the countertop. And guess what? 6 months later, the lady called me up and said, "My countertop's got bubbles in it." I regretted that day.
In my Corvette. Then I went to Afghanistan. My buddy had it in his carport and then took it out because his wife got mad, put it out on the street, kept the windows rolled up. I came back and all the carpet was peeled back and faded. That's it. Texas sun will kill it. I'm telling you, it'll kill everything. My boots fell apart that were in that car.
Do we have any other things, Steve French, if you're still out there, my friend? Do you have anything else you would like to answer or say out there in the chat to everybody? And I appreciate you being out there during the show and helping me out. Dickinson Hoffman still out there. Green Bay Wacky. Simply Wooden Creations, have a great night. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being out there, Green Bay Wacky. Thank you so very much. Steve Carmichael, James Parker, Becky's Texas Wood Shop. Trying to go back through. Tracy Keaton, Dickinson Hoffman. I already said his name. Jeff Robinson, who?
Woodwork.
Yep. All y'all been out there in the chat. I thank you all so very much. And I'm sorry, I'd love to go back through, and I'm trying to go back through and see that guy Awesome Wood Things. I wished he'd get the heck out of the chat because he just.
I know, right? Come on.
Becky's Dan Inge from Dan Inge Woodworking, Dan Ingerbritsen. I remember what his name is. Somebody commented about that. Well, you don't even know what Inge stands for. Yes, I do.
Hey, Ox in the Shop. They're also too.
Who?
Ox in the Shop.
Ox in the Shop. Oh, Drew Oxford?
Drew. He was out there.
Oh, thank you, Drew, for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you all for being out there.
Dennis Goodson.
James Parker came up there and brought me all that kind of stuff and everything. So I went over there and I was like, I wanted to buy. It was his birthday is tomorrow, I think it is. And I said I was wanting to buy him a birthday present. And I was like, well, everybody can use wood glue. And he specifically told me we were talking about this Titebond thing. He goes, we were talking about glue, and he mentioned that. He used the old Titebond original. Oh, I love the original. It's the best stuff. So I bought him a bottle of Titebond original glue and gave it to him for his birthday. So he goes, I have 2 of them already. And I went like, well, thank you for spoiling my day.
No, it's 3.
But you're welcome. He said, thanks for the birthday present, Russ. And you're welcome, James.
Don't let them freeze.
Yeah, don't let them freeze. Keep them in the house. I'm glad you enjoyed that, and I know I have. And there was a lot of technical information that I do not remember from Bob. I really hope that he's able to come on the show and in the future and do his presentation for us live and show some of the diagrams and stuff what he can. I'm really looking forward to that. No promises. I mentioned it to him, and he's got to get with his people. But I hope I remembered enough and about it, because I learned. I mean, that night I learned a ton of information from him, and it made me understand. Real quick before we get off here about that, some of the things that really causes havoc on a glue joint, not only to fail, but just on the wood, and like you're building a tabletop, for instance. And okay, I got a real quick question for all y'all that are still watching. Biscuits and dowels, wooden dowels, biscuits and wooden dowels, and we're not talking about gravy and biscuits for breakfast. Biscuits and wooden dowels. Okay.
From lunch then?
Glue or don't glue? Or do you glue them or don't glue them?
Yes, glue.
Glue them, yeah.
I don't use them.
The biscuits expand.
Yeah, you would glue them.
So
Actually, no, you're wrong.
what?
But if you go back and look at I know this because I do know this because as a woodworker, biscuits and wooden dowels are only for alignment purposes. If the glue gets on them, that's fine. They were with the Titebond and stuff. They don't have a thing to do with the join. That's the two pieces of wood that are going together. The wooden dowels and the biscuits are strictly to align the pieces to keep them from doing this, which the salt does.
The whole world has been a lie.
You mean
I
Norm
know.
got along for all
No,
those?
I didn't.
Norm lied to me when I was
I don't know. I'm gonna be like that one guy. I'm gonna call BS on that because glue
I'm with you on that one, Ken.
Biscuits are
biscuits-
kind of loose in the
biscuits
slot.
expand.
No,
And-
you actually, if you cut the biscuit right, it's supposed to be very tight. Yeah.
But they
I don't have anything to do with it. It's a little drill
See, by
thing.
number 10, it has no way to dial it in. It just
Yeah, it's a blade.
I'm gonna have nightmares tonight for this.
I hate you for saying that.
Look what you did to me, man.
Just
There's
saying.
9 of us, Russ.
So
and
anyway,
one of you.
so if so that's what the whole purpose of the biscuits and the wooden dowels was, to get the two pieces to align up straight. If you glued them, it's okay. It's not a big deal. But my point is
dowels
Is
I
it-
get because
it was originally designed to keep the T pieces from slipping so that the glue could do its job.
Yeah,
dowels
Matt,
have always been super tight, but not the biscuits. They float in that hole.
with you on
No,
that.
I've got a biscuit cutter and I've got biscuits. And if you set that biscuit cutter to cut the biscuits in properly, when you lock them together, they lock in, and it's actually hard to get them apart.
When you say set the cutter, you mean the alignment of both cuts or actually dialing in the tool somehow?
You dial the tool in so that the blade thickness should be the same thickness as the biscuit. You dial the tool in so that you punch in that little hole. If you punch it in too deep, it's going to be loose. If you punch it in just right, it's going to be really, really tight to the point that they're like wooden dowels and you have to force them together.
I swear my biscuit cutter has no user settings. I mean, other than setting the fence.
Then the depth, right, Matt?
Well,
No, it has to have a depth and a height for setting. If you
Mine
can't
has
have
a
the same
height.
height on a 2x4 as a 1 by a 3/4 inch. So you have to have a
yes, the
height this way,
It's got the height. The height is there.
and it has to
Not
have a
push
depth
in.
this way.
I don't
Mine
think
has a
Russ
depth
has
setting
either.
this way.
Mine doesn't.
I'll have to look at mine.
I've got a craftsman.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
It
I'm
sounds
sorry,
like
Dad.
we all
Mine doesn't have a
settings go in.
festival domino, so
We're not talking flying
in the
tenants.
So
mail.
the next show is going to be about biscuits and gravy, guys.
right on. I'll make that one.
Bacon.
Where's your basket, Russ? What basket? My basket. You're talking about this, James? That's the only basket I think you gave me, sitting right up here.
I think this show just got way too controversial.
Yeah. So anyway,
I'm just
I know, and I knew I was going to stir up controversy because when he said that, there was all. Trust me, there was half of the woodworking group in my club that went like, "Oh, you're full of crap," and the other half went like, "No, that's actually what I was taught." And I was taught from my father as a carpenter that dowel pins and biscuit joints for keeping in a line when I glue it together. Now, I'm not going to sit there and lie to you to say that, yeah, they did glue them together, but the functionality was so that this piece didn't slip over this piece. That kept them in alignment.
In my video, I said the biscuits give the glue more surface to grab onto. I mean, I guess that's all BS.
Oh boy, did I open up a box of worms.
One of my video right now.
Yeah.
One of the woodworking magazines a while back did a test on biscuits and dowels and whatnot, and biscuits add zero strength to the joint, as dowels do actually, because it's a cross grain situation, and the shear strength of the dowel is a whole lot stronger than a biscuit is. A biscuit you can snap and no problem.
Yeah.
But I agree.
So see, John's meeting me halfway here.
Well, no, I don't use them because I have tried it all, been there, done that, and all that crap. And to me, it's just an extra step. You know, a well-machined butt joint is about the best you can get.
We're going to have to make t-shirts.
Sam Maloof said he didn't like biscuits, so I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, and Ossiman says better do a show on dowels and biscuits to clean this up. Hey, biscuits and gravy and grits.
I think if you go back in the history of finding about wooden dowels and biscuits, go back and find out what their really purpose was, why they were made. I think you'll find out they were for alignment.
We need t-shirts.
You'll find out for alignment. Well, think about it. Back in the old days when they built wooden cabins and logs and stuff, they used to drill the holes with the bit, and and what did they drive through? It was a piece of wood. There wasn't no glue on it, so it was aligned to two pieces of wood together to hold them together. Had no glue on it whatsoever.
But with the, I want to still go with the dowels, because there's enough meat in the dowels that, as the wood tries to move later on.
Yeah.
It keeps it aligned later, not only alignment in the initial construction, but maintaining that alignment. And biscuits are not going to do that.
No, not necessarily biscuits, but I'm talking about wooden dowels.
But dowels will.
Yeah. So we've opened up a whole new can of worms. They're going to have a bunch of hate mail in the morning. I can see it.
Oh, yeah, you are.
You don't know what the heck you're talking about, Russ. And you're probably right. I probably have no clue. But my father taught me two things that I learned out of what the man Bob told me about it is first off, he's when my father used to tell me, when you glue something up and clamp it down hard enough till you see the glue start oozing out real good along the whole edge, and then stop. And then Bob even said, yes, that's true. You don't want to starve a glue joint. In other words, you want to squeeze it all out. And the other thing was about the biscuits and the dowels. My father always told me, the only reason I'm putting these in there is to make sure the two pieces get together and they don't slip apart, because they didn't have the clamping systems we had today to keep things aligned.
Yeah.
And so he told me that, and I always thought for years, that I glue my dowels in. I glue my biscuits in when I'm putting a joint together. Don't get me wrong. I've done that for years, but I also remember in the back of my mind, my father saying, keep these things aligned. And when Bob said the other night, that's the purpose of biscuits and dowels, was for the alignment of it. I went like, wow, the old man wasn't stupid after all.
I just want to ask a question.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't glue be better than no glue in this situation of this?
hey, I'm not the expert. Don't shoot the messenger. So I'm just telling you what he said. And I do remember my father telling me that without a shadow of a doubt. Because my father made a lot of cabinetry and stuff for people and some others and did a lot of carpentry work. And I do remember those two things. As soon as I've known about the clamping, don't squeeze it all the glue out. I've known that for years and years. It's always been in my mind. But a few things have refreshed me. I've only made probably, I'm 59 years old and I've been doing woodworking since I was knee high to a grasshopper. I've only used biscuits probably maybe a dozen times making things in my entire life. And wooden dowels, maybe a dozen things. I just don't use them that often in the stuff I make. So I don't have a lot of experience with that kind of stuff. But I do definitely remember him telling me that and being in the shop about the alignment situation. And that's why I used them. I was gluing down a tabletop of about 3 foot wide and biscuit the whole thing to keep them all straight in a line. And it worked beautiful. But did I glue the biscuits in? Hell yeah. But I didn't put them in there for that. Because when I locked those, I actually locked them together as a dry fit and had a hard time pulling them apart. That's how the biscuits were so tight.
The other thing, I think it just comes from practice and experience and watching.
It does.
Making sure that your clamp pressure is even the whole length of your piece of work.
Right.
Now, Russ, you talking about gluing these in? You don't have to glue them in, but why not?
Well, Steve French said, yes, glue the biscuits and dowels. The more glue surface, the better. And I kind of agree with that. You're not going to, in any way, shape, or form, lose by gluing them in.
That's my point.
Wrong.
You know what? You're ruining your next show right now. I thought
you're just not going to lose anything by gluing them in. But in the reality of it, if the holes are properly aligned and it's properly fit, the glue's not necessarily.
So if anybody wants to buy a biscuit joiner, I have one up for grabs.
I want Russ's because it works good.
I've got 2 of them.
Yeah,
I could sell now.
Well,
now, you know,
I don't have a big joiner and I can't afford one, so I'm going to hang on with what Sam.
When I get all the hate mails and all the information, then I'm going to call Bob because I have his number.
Yeah, there you go.
Bob, you're full of crap. I'm sending all this to you. And you're the one that told me to say this stuff.
Well, then he has to come on your show to straighten all this out.
Yeah, they're going to have to come on the show and straighten us all this
Hey,
out.
Russ, I have a question for you.
Says you're right. There are 4 alignment tools.
Well, now that you've ruined my night, I got to get going.
All right, yeah, we're going to cut out of here.
I gotta go.
If we don't have any more questions, don't leave right yet, Paul, because I'll close out within 5 minutes.
Okay.
I have a question, Russ.
Okay.
And it may have already been addressed, but I missed the first part. I had a phone call. Why is Brenda wearing sunglasses? It's creepy.
I have no clue.
I have an eye
Because she's not
infection.
Diane.
I have an eye infection.
Oh, okay.
That's an eye infection.
And a meth lab.
She thought she was Casey.
All right, so
I keep waiting for her to start singing a song.
we're thank you very much, all you guys. Thank you, Steve Frentz, for being out there in the chat and helping me with this. And once again, I would just want to point this out. If you do glue your dowels and biscuits, it's not wrong by no means. And it could add to the glue joint. But my point is, and I'll restate this, is their purpose was for alignment. Okay? Just to make sure that that's clarified.
Backpedaling 101, folks. You said
I didn't
it first.
said the same. Their purpose was for alignment. So Dickinson
that crawfish.
Hoffman said, good show again. Thank you. Tom Spillane said it's Debbie. No. Okay. Now you all know the rest of the story. Yes, Becky. Thank you. I appreciate that. Good point for Steve French. He says, like when you attach wooden rails to melamine, the dowels provide all the glue surface. In that case, I will totally agree with you. Yes, they are what's providing the holding power on that. But anyway, once again, thank you for all being out there. We've had a great time in the chat, and I appreciate y'all being out there. Thank you, Becky, Jim, Katie, John. When I said Becky. It's Brenda, by God. It's Brenda. Why do I get your why do I get your name wrong all the time?
It's her sunglasses. She can't tell who
I don't
she is.
recognize you. Okay. All right. So Brenda, let's start over again. Brenda.
Put it back up again, Brenda. Put it back up again.
And so it's Brenda.
Yes, it's Brenda.
Okay, I got that right. Okay, Brenda. Jim. Katie, John, Matt, Ken, Al, Paul. Russ.
Paul.
And I have no idea why I keep getting her name wrong. You would think after a while this idiot would figure it out that it's Brenda. My name is Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. I appreciate that. Yeah, Brenda.
We're just gonna have to get you a name tag.
Yeah. Put it up behind you. Hey, you see how they have this little thing right here that flashes all that? You use the one that says Brenda, 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 Brenda.
Oh my
God. That's embarrassing after a while. I look like an idiot. Okay, so
be embarrassed.
We only have one thing left to do. Let me get the hell out of here. Just give me sawdust, lots of sawdust all around me and everywhere. I like it flying all around my shop and even in my beard. And I got a haircut, short hair. Good night, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't hold your breath.
Bye, Debbie.
Good night, Brenda.
Good night, Darlene.